Hey friend, come in. Close the tab with the breaking news and settle into that night quiet headspace with me. Dim the lights if you can. Maybe click on a little brown noise track, or just listen to the air conditioner hum. And before we start riffling through medieval manuscripts, tap the like button so the algorithm monks know you passed through. Subscribe if you'd like to stroll more sleepy corridors with me every week, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time your clock just blinked. I love picturing this late-night library stretching from my desk to yours. Glowing screens in Kansas, Kerala, and Krakow, all sharing the same candle-soft vibe. Ready? Good. Now imagine a doorway only 4 feet wide and formed from stone so old it looks fossilized. There's no squeak of hinges because the door is actually a curtain of heavy wool dyed the color of steeped tea. You brush it aside, and at once everything in your senses crouches. Sound shrinks to the scratch of quill on vellum, a distant drip, a breath you aren't sure is yours. You've just stepped into a medieval monastic library, maybe around the year 1250, and the rules here are quieter than a vow. Your eyes need a moment. Light leaks through arrow-slit windows high overhead, scattering down in columns that seem almost solid. The air tastes of dust and lanolin and a hint of melted tallow from candles perched like sentries on every lectern. You can almost smell the words. Iron gall ink, throat-catching and metallic, mingling with the earthy funk of parchment that was a calf skin when the last king was crowned. One thing you won't hear: chatting. Not a syllable, not a whisper. Conversation is outlawed in this place for reasons both spiritual and practical. First, these brothers believe words are power. Fling them around carelessly and you chip the sacred off them. Second, vellum is expensive, labor is holy, and a single break in concentration can ruin a leaf that took a shepherd 9 months, a tanner 6 weeks, and a scribe 40 trembling hours to prepare. So, instead of speech, the monks have built an entire traffic system of gestures. Picture Brother Elred at the far desk, robe pooling around his feet. He straightens, blinks, and raises 2 fingers, index and middle, palm inward, the sign for "I require the key." Keys matter here because books are chained to reading benches like wary dogs. Not because monks fear each other, exactly, but because abbots fear fire, flood, and worst of all, absent-minded novices who leave psalters on windowsills. A single missing folio could bankrupt the community. So each morning, an armarius, the keeper of texts, unlocks the chains with a key the size of a sparrow. He wears that key on a leather thong around his neck, tucked beneath his scapular so it doesn't click. Silence extends even to metal. Eldred's gesture is answered by Brother Martin, the assistant armarius. Martin is halfway up a ladder checking for mold on a commentary by Bede. He sees the fingers, nods once, tucks the ladder's hooked top rung deeper over the shelf rail, slides down, and pads over. No eye rolls about being interrupted. Patience is scripture here. Martin touches his own lips with one finger, understood, and disappears behind a curtain embroidered with wheat stalks. In a moment he returns, key in hand, chain in the other, and he and Eldred trade objects with a bow of exactly 30 degrees. That bow isn't pious theater, it's part of the rules. Chain exchanges must be respectful because to drop a link on stone might clang. You shuffle sideways between lecterns to watch. Each desk is angled like a music stand, but heavier, with a cushioned trough for resting a codex and a votive candle recessed into a horn lantern. Soft light, little soot. On the floor, straw, replaced weekly, muffles footsteps, insulates against damp, and soaks up stray tallow. Everything here conspires toward hush. Aelred unlocks a small brass padlock attached to the chain of his bench. The chain slithers through an iron ring riveted to the desk, and then through a hole bored into the book's wooden cover. He unthreads it, returns both lock and link to Martin, bows again, and lifts the codex as if it were a slumbering infant. You notice his fingers. Ink-stained, yes, but also scarred. Parchment edges are sharp, and quills snap. Monastic work is not as gentle as Hollywood candle glow implies. Aelred retreats down a side aisle. You follow at a polite distance. Another rule, no one may shadow another too closely, lest they read over shoulders. Intellectual property isn't a buzzword yet, but each scriptorium has its prized glosses, and some abbeys would rather lose a cow than a unique commentary. At a private carrel near the apse, Aelred settles, sets a weight on the page to keep it open, and breathes as if preparing for surgery. He is. His patient is knowledge, and the incision is a quill. You'd think copying text is monotonous, but in the monastery mindscape, this is pilgrimage. Each letter is a cobblestone on the road to Jerusalem. Let your thoughts wander, you'll miss a stone, trip, maybe bring the whole caravan of future readers tumbling into error. Worse, miscopy a single phrase of doctrine, and heresy may bloom like mold in a damp corner, silently, disastrously. So the brothers have invented micro-rituals to reset focus. After every third line, Aelred pinches a pinch of sand from a small horn cup and lets it drizzle across the wet ink. Sibilant grains, like tiny prayers. Then he tips the page, taps, sweeps the sand into a clay dish, and resumes. A novice approaches, hands clasped, head bowed. Without words, he sets a pitcher of warm water on the floor near Aelred's bench. Hydration matters. Dehydration births mistakes. The pitcher has a wooden lid with a beeswax seal. Dust must never settle on wet ink. Once the novice steps back, Aelred gives the tiniest nod. That nod says gratitude, but also you may go. Or maybe you read too much into it. The vocabulary of nods here is more nuanced than 50 scrolls of royal correspondence. You turn, careful not to knock a candle. 2 aisles down, a brother signals urgently. He touches thumb to ear and fans fingers. Need sharpening stone. Across the room, a contratenor voice thrums a single note. That's unusual. Humming is mostly banned, but this note is a bell replacement. It tells everyone the midday psalms begin in 5 minutes. Only 5 minutes, because lingering after the hum might let manuscripts sit unwatched. Mice are real, damp is real, and books must be closed, chained, covered before the monks file to chapel. At the hum, dozens of small routines ignite. Keys returned, chains secured, pages fanned gently to disperse last drops of ink. Brothers blow out candles with pewter snuffers, never by breath. Moisture carries spittle. You watch a monk cup his palm before the wick, whisper a prayer for the scribe who will open the book next, then pinch the ember between damp fingertips. Smells of hot wax and scorched linen tease your nose. Before leaving, every monk runs a hand above the desk surface, checking for razors left out, quills forgotten. A single sliver of goose feather can warp under heat, curl, scorch, ignite. Fire is the library's demon king, and the rules here are exorcisms. The procession to chapel is slow, deliberate. Each brother's cowl creates a moving arch of shadow. Sandaled heat slaps stone in unison, a heartbeat cloistered under ribcage walls. You fall in step, though you aren't sure if visitors are allowed. The brother ahead hints a gesture, right hand describing a circle above left palm. Translation: stay, guests wait. You halt. No shame. You get to linger alone in the emptied library, an honor few nobles achieve. Silence now is cathedral big. It presses on your eardrums like altitude. Candles are out, shafts of daylight shoulder more prominently through clerestory. Dust motes drift like lost souls. You wander. Shelves rise to the rafters, planked with chestnut seasoned a century. On the edges of boards, tiny inked letters, signa, mark shelf order. The catalog lives entirely in the armoris's skull. Writing it down risks theft. You reach toward a volume bound in tawed pigskin. The chain tugs. Even as a visitor, you can read its body language. Do not. These books obey only the key. You seat yourself at a vacant desk, feel the groove worn by years of elbows, see knife nicks where quills were trimmed. Under the lectern, a narrow drawer slides out to reveal pumice for smoothing pages, a stopper of greenish oil for supple covers, and a parchment scrap listing gestures. Index finger to nose means bring spectacles. Crossed wrists mean I need red ink. Closed fist over heart means I've made a mistake, pray for me. The language is intimate, confessional. In a place without voices, hands must carry vulnerability. Time passes, or seems to. Hard to tell. Absence of clocks is another rule. Bells ring for canonical hours, not for 3:15. So you wait until footfalls return, echoing down the hall. Brothers file back, eyes lowered, calm as clouds. They reclaim desks, relight wicks with a brass taper lit from a single sanctuary lamp. Continuity of flame matters. One fire signifies one spirit. Suddenly, commotion. Silent commotion, which might be the scariest variety. A novice lifts his hands, palms out, waving. That means intruder. Sometimes a mouse, sometimes a bigger beast. Today it's a cat. Lord Benedict, the Abbey Mouser. Tail kinked, proud as sin, trotting between benches. Cats are both menace and mercy. They eat mice, but enjoy sitting on open books because vellum is deliciously warm under candlelight. The brothers freeze. One extends 2 fingers downward and waggles, lure. Another produces a scrap of salted fish from a pouch. Don't ask why, monks believe in preparation. The cat is coaxed away, crisis averted, and every breast unclenches. Afternoon slants toward evening. More copying. You watch changeovers. When one monk's back stiffens, he signs for relief. Hands clasped, then pulled apart like opening a door. A replacement takes his seat. Manuscripts are living things and should never sit unattended. You also learn that each codex has a blessing page up front, often in Latin hexameter, cursing thieves with imaginative torments. May your eyes rot should you steal this book, is mild compared to, "May you be swallowed by serpents bred in your gut by your own perfidy." Medieval spirituality. Come for the grace, stay for the body horror. As dusk seeps, shutters are closed. Not latched, just pulled to. Air must circulate. Torches in wall sconces stay unlit. Open flame above waist height is barred. Instead, rushlights, tallow-soaked reeds are stuck in iron stands clusters. They hiss softly, emit little heat, smell faintly of barn. Yet their light is perfect for reading narrow columns. You suspect a science here. The flicker frequency matches the column width so eyes don't fatigue. Or maybe monks discovered comfort by holy accident. Brother Martin appears again, and you notice a parchment slip dangling from his belt. It's the loan register, another silent safeguard. On it, he notes parchment widths, line counts, even DNA marks from the animal hide. Modern scholars will call this chain of custody, but to Martin, it's stewardship. Knowledge is borrowed from God. You sign the ledger when you take it, sign again when you pass it on, hoping your soul remains margin clean. Outside, the cloister winds night air that smells of thyme and stable. A bell tolls for refectory. The hum note again, lower this time, and the entire library exhales. Chains clink softly, locks snap. Keys return to the neck of the armarius, who pins them under 2 layers of wool and linen. One monk, before leaving, knuckles the spine of a gigantic Bible as if saying, "Good night." You exit last. Elred holds the critin for you, nods gratitude. You shouldn't deserve, but accept. In the corridor, you hear the world again. Someone chopping leeks, ravens conversing on roof beams, distant river hush. And you realize the library was an instrument, tuned to silence so the faintest thought could be heard. Now, slide back to your own room, wherever that may be. Close your eyes and see the dust motes. Hear the unspoken languages. Some part of you is still in that library. And maybe tonight your dreams will smell faintly of parchment and candle grease. Slide back through that wool curtain with me. Yes, the same one our fingers brushed earlier. And feel how the warmth of the refectory lingers on your skin, even as cool stone breathes its night chill against your cheeks. Candlelight from the cloister hallway dwindles behind us until the library reclaims its throne of shadow. No bell will ring before lauds, yet a second life inside these walls is already stirring, quieter, stranger, and, if anyone asked the abbot, utterly forbidden. So let's keep our footfalls feather soft. And if you're enjoying this after-hours trespass, nudge the like button so YouTube's sleepy algorithm lets other night owls discover the hush. Still here? Good. Let's risk the dark. The brothers finished their barley stew an hour ago, but discipline never sleeps. Each monk was assigned a vigil shift, a turn at guarding words from wax drip, rodents, and the sort of accidents that only happen when humanity starts dreaming. There are 4 of them on duty tonight, chosen by lot. Although rumor whispers the armarius skews the drawing so that men with steadiest hands serve during storm season. You hear the weather already, wind threading through arrow slits, rattling shutters like dice in God's own gaming cup. Winter in these hills snarls hard. Lightning can jump roof beams, rain seeps under tiles, and parchment edges curl like frightened dogs. Not a night to leave the library alone. First, Brother Hugo limps in. He's youngest of the quartet, but an abscess in his heel makes his arrival sound like a metronome. Every fifth step crunches straw louder. Every sixth is half a beat behind. He bows toward the lectern that cradles the monastery's gospel book, 4 inches thick, bound in walnut boards, silver bosses glinting. Tradition says the guard shift begins by touching 2 fingers to the gospel spine and tracing a cross in the air, as if drawing a lock over the texts. Hugo does it, wincing. His fingers tremble. Holding a candle stub between knuckles, he crosses to the wall sconces and removes each rushlight one by one, sniffing tips, trimming if needed, planting the wicks upright in clay saucers. A pool of soft light spreads like milk.
Next comes Brother Alfric, older, broader, shoulders stooped under a lifetime of lifting stone slabs for the Abbey's new transept. His presence is thunder quiet. You feel him before you register sound. Alfric carries a bucket of sand and a wooden shovel the size of a serving spoon. He distributes miniature dunes beneath each candle and rushlight. Last year, a single overturned lantern cost them 6 psalters and a bench. The screams of the novice who knocked it over still haunt the cloister. So, sand is gospel. He moves, scoops, pats, muttering a one-word prayer each time. Guard, shield, shelter, until the floor looks like tiny beaches edging islands of desk.
Brother Martin, yes, our ever-busy assistant Armarius, arrives third, clutching the same ledger you glimpsed, plus a coil of spare chains. Night is prime time for book migration. If lightning strikes the scriptorium roof, the brothers must shunt manuscripts from water's path in minutes. Martin's plan: attach extra chains tonight so each codex can be unclipped and moved in a single sweep. He unrolls the links onto a tabletop, their whisper like serpents sliding over bark. His eyes flick toward you, well, toward our vantage point, as though sensing an audience. He bows, barely, recognition of your witness to this ritual. Finally, Sister Domitilla steps through the curtain. Wait, sister? Indeed. The Abbey hosts a handful of anchoresses in a tiny adjacent house, and the prioress has agreed that scholarship is no man-only domain. Domitilla sheds a gray cloak, revealing the russet habit of her order, and the hush inside the library tenses, then relaxes. No rule forbids her presence, but centuries of custom frown. She carries a lidded lantern whose mica windows glow amber, and inside that lantern a single coal taken from the eternal vigil's brazier in her cell. A flame that never dies, meeting words that must never die. Symbolism layered like palimpsest. Another quick note. Tilt your phone just now and hit subscribe if you haven't, so you'll catch the moment when Domitilla's coal changes everything later tonight. Storm wind flexes again, more insistent. Window shutters groan, hinges complaining. Hugo and Alfric exchange a gesture, hand flat, slicing downward. Secure. They move to iron bars, slide them into brackets, tighten the wooden wedges. No storm latch thuds too loud. Every impact is cushioned by cloth wrapped round the bars in daylight for just this purpose. Still, thunder jumps overhead, lightning cracks strobing down the aisles. In each flash, the chained books glitter like constellations. The vigil begins. Hugo reads aloud, barely above breath, from a bestiary chained at his bench. Reading out loud to oneself is permitted at night because the library is otherwise empty. His voice mingles with rain. He speaks of the caladrius bird, pure white, which absorbs disease from kings, then flies sunward to burn it away. Hugo's timbre quavers. Rumor says plague surfaced in a market town east of here. Maybe the brothers copy faster when death hovers, like scribes racing sunset. Martin, meanwhile, inspects every clasp, every hinge of armaria cupboards built into the walls. He pauses at a cupboard labeled with a stylized fish. That symbol marks medical texts, herbals, anatomical diagrams scribbled from stolen glimpses at battle casualties. He removes one folio, glances over his shoulder, then unwraps a packet of dried rosemary and slides it between pages. Rosemary oil repels silverfish. Martin is chemist, warden, and surgeon to his patients of parchment. Across the room, Domitilla kneels at a desk, unlocking a small chest the abbey loaned her order. Inside, pigment stones, azurite, malachite, red lead, crushed down for illuminations. She is here not to copy, but to gild. Her task, breathing stars onto the genealogy of Christ, an unfinished masterpiece. No rule forbids a woman's hand on the page, but gossip from neighboring houses stings. So Domitilla works in night's anonymity, using breath so shallow it scarcely fogs the gold leaf. The coal's glow illuminates only her immediate world, circle of light within oceanic dark. Suddenly, thunder cracks directly overhead, startling even steady Alfric. A shutter left unlatched above the gospel desk springs open, wind slamming rain inward. Rain spots plummet like black ink. Alfric bellows, no time for codes. Hugo leaps, skids on straw, collides with Martin. Both crash into a bench. Domitilla's lantern jerks, almost topples. You feel the whole library gasp. Training surfaces. Alfric yanks a waxed canvas sheet from under a side table, emergency cover, and tosses it to Martin. Martin flicks it open, spreads over the gospel like a mother bird. Hugo, following the disaster drill, scoops sand with both hands, flings onto the puddling water to dam its flow before it reaches lesser manuscripts. Domitilla dashes, habit hiked, to wrestle the shutter closed. Her coal lantern remains on the desk, casting wild shadows across the vaulted ceiling. Shutter secured, hearts hammering, they assess damage. Only the lectern's oak top is damp, gospel safe beneath canvas. Straw floor crackles as sand drinks rain. Domitilla, chest heaving, signs apology, closed fist to chest, then open palm outward. Hugo mirrors the gesture back. Absolution granted. Lightning flashes again, but fainter. The storm rolls west. Relief creeps in. The unspoken rule here: after emergency, give thanks. All four kneel briefly. No words. Their silence radiates stronger than prayer chanted by choirs. You might think drama is over, but libraries have their own politics brewing like yeast in barrels. Martin's ledger remained on the floor where he dropped it. In the scramble, ink from Domitilla's toppled pigment jar bled across the page, obscuring 2 lines of the loan register. He notices now, face blanching. Those lines held the chain numbers for a set of Augustinian sermons currently at another abbey for copying. Without them, accountability falters. Should those books be lost, blame could fall on Martin's shoulders. Panic twitches through his fingers. He stares at Domitilla. Her pigment jar? Her fault? But to accuse aloud would shatter the vow of quiet and dishonor hospitality. Instead, Martin offers the gesture for aid, both hands palms up. Domitilla nods, unhooks a small linden wood writing tablet from her belt, wax-coated, and hands it over, along with her stylus. Martin copies the missing numbers from memory onto wax. Tomorrow, he'll recopy the ledger page. Disaster, dodged by cooperation deeper than words.
Hours pass. Scribes take micro-naps, leaning forehead to forearm exactly 3 breaths long, then wake to continue. You roam among them like a night spirit, noticing details. A quill sharpened so often it's now half its original length. A miniature drawing of a snail in a margin, Monk's rebellious graffiti. A scrap of vellum pinned above a desk, reading, "Silence is wine, words are vinegar." You test the truth of that proverb. Swallow the hush around you and feel it warm, mellow, almost intoxicating. Mid-shift, Domitilla's gold leaf refuses to adhere. Humidity after the storm slicks the glue size. She gestures to Hugo, thumb twisting at fingertip. Heat. Hugo fetches a clay brazier ember, sets it under the desk to dry the page gently. The gold finally bites, catching lantern light in constellations. Tiny stars shimmer between genealogical names, Jesse to David to Solomon, proof that silence can birth galaxies. A scraping sound, stone on stone, draws everyone's attention. Alfric is at the east wall, sliding aside a decorative panel carved with vines. Behind it, a cubby, the secret overflow. Rule states the library must never exceed its capacity. Extra books mean extra candles, more chance of fire. But learning keeps breeding, so the Armarius hides volumes here. Alfric pulls out a newly arrived text, Aristotle's Meteorologica, freshly translated from Arabic. Greek philosophy inside a Latin abbey is political nitroglycerin. He hefts it, unsure where to chain it. Martin shakes his head, no chain prepared for that dimension. Domitilla gestures, index finger to lips, then drawing a circle on her wrist. Seal it away for now. They slide the panel shut. Knowledge delayed is still knowledge saved. Storm's tail flits off. Night breathes easier. Outside, an owl hoots, and inside, Domitilla dares a smile. She signals 3 fingers to forehead. Thanks be to the Trinity for safe passage. Hugo responds with 2-finger salute. Amen. For a moment, the library feels less like a fortress and more like a family room of shy geniuses. But calm births confession. Hugo limps to Martin, points to his heel, shrugs. He needs the herbal salve kept in the cupboard behind the fish symbol, though novices are forbidden direct access. Martin weighs compassion against regulation, then produces the key, yes, the sparrow-sized one, presses it into Hugo's palm, but overlays 2 fingers in warning. Return. Hugo nods gratefully, disappears into a shadowed aisle. Now only 3 remain visible. Minutes pass, too many. A faint clang echoes, metal on tile. Domitilla looks toward the fish cupboard corridor. Hugo's limp returns, faster now, face ashen. In his hand, the key broken, snapped at the stem.
The cupboard door stands locked with half a key inside. Worse, the spare is in the abbot's quarters, unreachable until dawn. That means no one can retrieve the medicinal salve, but also that the entire medical collection is inaccessible for mourning scholars. Breaking locks is a grave breach. Copying delays cost silver.
Martin's jaw tightens. He signals, both hands cutting across chest, trouble. Elfric excavates a tiny chisel from his tool pouch. Domitilla produces beeswax to mold a grip around broken metal. In silence, they improvise. After 20 minutes of delicate work, the stump spins, releases, door opens. Crisis number 2 resolved. But the broken key cannot be hidden. They must craft a replacement before sunrise. Domitilla sketches the key's profile onto wax. Alfric, who once forged hinges, believes he can hammer a soft iron blank into shape in the smithy. But leaving the library is against rule. Yet this rule is weighed against larger duty: protect access to knowledge. After a brief, tense pantomime, they decide Alfric will go. He folds his broad frame into his cloak, glides out into the rain-softened night. Martin scribbles a note in his ledger explaining the temporary absence. If Abbot checks, transparency might spare punishment. You exhale, realizing you've been holding breath through their ethical calculus. Even silent libraries roar with moral choices. Near dawn, Alfric returns, soot-streaked, clutching a still warm key. It fits. Lock turns. A collective breath, like bellows closing, fills the room. Hugo, salve applied, works despite pain to clean iron filings from the floor. Domitilla finishes her gilding, signs completion by touching gold leaf to forehead, then pressing it onto the margin, leaving a tiny glimmer shaped like a fingerprint. Personal, but unless sunlight hits exactly right, invisible. The vigil's final rite approaches, the rekeying. At first bell, all chains must be double-checked. Martin and Hugo walk opposite aisles, touching each link, counting softly to themselves. 1, 2, fideles, etc. Domitilla extinguishes her coal by smothering it under an overturned potsherd. Tradition says the coal must never meet water or its blessing breaks. She will reignite it in her anchor-hold hearth. Continuity resumed. Alfric sweeps sand and straw, gathering the night's anxieties into a basket. Outside, faint gray leaks along window edges. A blackbird chirps, the first voiced sentence in these walls for hours. The library, cleaned, healed, gold-flecked, waits. The wool curtain parts. Brother Prior steps in, flanked by 2 novices who carry fresh candles like offerings. He scans the room, nods approval. The vigil team forms a line, bows. No report is demanded. The library itself testifies. No scorch marks, no fallen shelves. Only those present know how close disaster came more than once. The prior signals dismissal. Hugo limps out. Domitilla gathers pigments. Martin shoulders his ledger. Alfric hefts the basket of sand and straw. You retreat with them, heart echoing the thunder that once shook these rafters. At the cloister door, Domitilla glances back, catches you in her gaze, somehow, and taps 2 fingers against her lips, a vow of quiet kept.
Before the morning swallows even bother clearing their throats, we slip back through that familiar woolen curtain and inhale the hush that still hums inside. Dawn strokes only the uppermost stained glass slivers, so every color you see is half awake, like paint mixed with moon water. If you made it here for a third wander, show the algorithm a wink, tap the like, drop a quiet, still listening in the comments, and pull the hood of your imagination up, because the day shift thinks silence is easy. We're about to learn it's an unbroken performance that could crack the toughest novice like thin ice. The Vigil team filed to their pallets barely an hour ago, but the library is already resetting itself for the diurnal ballet. First on stage, Brother Udo, bell ringer and keeper of the hand speech. He's small, fox-eyed, and his entire vocabulary travels in 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. Udo checks his tally board, tiny wax tablet hung beside the curtained door, scans that our number of torches equals the day's quota, and flicks a gesture that resembles plucking a harp, permission to enter. 3 novices shuffle behind him, barefoot, each gripping a different tool, a goosewing dusting brush, a horn scraper for candle drips, and the actual star of the show, a cedar wood clapper. The clapper isn't for rhythm. It's an alarm you can trigger without speech. 1 slap of its jaws means fire, 2 means intruder, 3 means master arrives. Beyond 3, the rulebook dissolves into ad-lib panic, so let's hope we never hear a 4th. Notice how nobody says good morning. Lips press together, heads tilt just so. Exact angle standardized long ago by Saint Rulemaker whoever. Greeting complete. The novices fan out, brandishing their tools like half-remembered instruments in a mute orchestra. The goosewing stirs motes into amber light. The horn scraper peels yesterday's wax tears from benches. And the clapper boy stands statue still, eyes darting like a night watchman who overslept in his post and refuses to admit it. Udo's next task is the key parade. Monastic keys aren't tossed on a hook. They travel on belts, serious as relics. Each one is long enough to double as a ruler for margin checks. There's the main door key, the scriptorium chest key, the herb cupboard key, freshly forged after last night's mishap, Alfric's handiwork already cooling to a dull pewter blush. And the crown jewel, the lectern key. That one unlocks the swiveling bar that lets you rotate the gospel for liturgical display. Udo wears them all on a carved bone ring that clicks softly when he walks, an accidental wind chime that tells the rest of the abbey text traffic is commencing. He moves toward the center reading desk, but halts, because Sister Domitilla reappears, arms wrapped around a thick roll of linen. She bows, unrolls the cloth, and presents last night's completed genealogy page. Gold glints like sunlight trapped in dew. Udo answers with a sign shaped like a bird taking off, fly forward, meaning the folio may enter the binding queue. The novices pivot as one, 2 steadying it, while the third preludes a procession you'd swear was carved into an illuminated capital somewhere. While they file to the bindery counter, we drift after them. On the way, our attention is snagged by Brother Marcus, today's appointed Costus Silentii, guardian of the hush. His weapon looks harmless, a knotted cord with colored beads. Each bead equals 1 minute of voice allowance for the entire staff. Total beads? 10. By compline, if a single bead remains unstent, meaning no one exceeded their whispers, the abbot gifts an extra slice of pear at supper. If all beads are gone early, entire community eats in wordless penance under stinging stares of their own stomachs. Peers matter. You'd trade a week of Psalter copying for a ripe one. So watch how fiercely Brother Marcus shields that cord.
And here is our next silent rule in action, the digitus indicans. When a monk needs to consult another across the room, he raises his index finger, not waving, but suspending, until the other acknowledges with a nod. Then both parties tiptoe to the side aisles. They press shoulder to shoulder, never face to face, and exchange thoughts in gesture, or, if absolutely needed, a whisper softer than quill strokes. During the brief contact, Marcus hovers like a raven, looking for glints of unauthorized syllables. The second words die, both monks finish with a sign similar to closing a book, thumb sliding across palm, declaring conversation sealed and done.
So, this morning, Brother Jocelyn, an illuminator with indigo blotches tattooing his fingertips, shoots up his index. Across stacks, Sister Domitilla returns the nod. They converge near a narrow window. Jocelyn opens his palm. Domitilla traces a circle with thumb, inkstone. Jocelyn then sketches a box in the air. He's asking to borrow her lapstone, prized for grinding gold leaf finer than flour. Domitilla mimes keys turning. Does he have permission slip? Jocelyn displays a wax tablet bearing the Armarius's dagger-shaped signature. Transaction authorized. No word spoken. Beads on Marcus's cord remain still. One slice of pear still safe. And because engagement is oxygen, I'm going to challenge you watching. Which modern workplace could survive on 10 spoken minutes a day? Drop your answer below, and if you guess my own job, I owe you a digital pear emoji. Now, let's veer into the chain forest. These iron vines loop through manuscript spines and bolt to benches, a medieval answer to library theft. Last night's close call left several chains unlatched. Brother Martin, bleary-eyed yet proud owner of a salvaged ledger, conducts inspection with Domitilla's help. They communicate entirely in the gemma sign, gem signs, finger gestures named after gemstones to denote chain length categories. Sapphire means 12 links, topaz 15, ruby 18. Martin lifts each chain, Domitilla flashes gemstone counts. When numbers match, Martin carves a vertical tally mark onto a new slate board. When a chain's one link short, rust snapped overnight, she taps 2 fingers to her forehead. Danger. Martin chalks a crooked cross, sets that chain aside for the smithy. Repeat 47 times. Meanwhile, novices wheel in the reading benches for daily scholars. Wheels? Yes. Each bench stands on 4 small bronze casters, invented by some nameless genius who hated scraping oak across flagstone at matins. But benches are heavy, and casters squeak like field mice. Udo circles with a flagon of goose grease, daubing axles quickly. Each daub is followed by a silent "thank you" nod from novices. Shallow bow from Udo. An endless waltz of micro-gratitude. Sunlight thickens, playing stained glass blues and crimsons across vellum pages. The library door creaks, an allowable sound because hinges wear out. Brother Prior enters with a secular visitor. Sir Benoit, minor knight, donor of last year's cattle tithe, and, frankly, a swaggering risk to silence. Laymen are ill-trained in hush. The prior gifts him a finger to lips, and Sir Benoit actually tucks his chin, remembering some etiquette. They approach the gospel lectern. Udo unlocks the swiveling bar, rotates the massive book so the knight can gaze at shimmering script. Sir Benoit whispers, too loud, "Exquisite." Marcus's head snaps up. One bead slides off the cord. Pear slice lost. You feel collective shoulders sag, but no glare surfaces. Resignation, practiced for years. The knight pulls a velvet pouch, empties 3 silver coins onto the desk. Donation for parchment repairs. Silver's clink echoes. Marcus can't penalize metallic syllables, but noise meter in everyone's skull ticks up a notch. Prior escorts Benoit out before he commits further crimes of volume. Door closes, libraries exhale. During midday, scribes break for bread and ale in the refectory, but someone must always mind the words. The rota chooses Domitilla, Martin, and a novice named Crispin. Their packed snacks, rye crusts and dried pear peel. Pear never escapes, even if silence cost the real fruit earlier. They chew with lips sealed. Rulebook states mastication louder than a psalm tone is punishable by extra fasting. Crispin, terrified novice, almost chokes trying to keep quiet. Domitilla slides him a small flask of river water. Crisis bypassed. Then the messenger hawk arrives. Actual bird, leather tube strapped to leg. It bangs the lattice high above, flapping until Martin lowers a perch pole. The hawk perches, blinking gold eyes. Removing a message is a loud talk time. Marcus permits 2 whispered words. Hold still. Another bead sacrificed. Message reveals the neighboring abbey requests loan of Physica by Hildegard of Bingen. But that copy lies currently in scriptorium under repair. Decision time again. They cannot say no, lest they appear ungenerous. Cannot say yes if parchment's still flaking. Solution. Send summary leaves now, full codex later. Martin drafts reply on wax, attaches tube, and strokes hawk's breast, indicating safe sky. Afternoon sun climbs, meaning illumination work begins. Color flows best when light is high. Jocelyn returns with Domitilla's lapstone, thanks her with the agate sign, thumb and ring finger pinch, other fingers fan, implying debt repaid. She dips quill in verdigris, draws vines around Christ's ancestry, every curve silent hymn. You, front row spectator, trace her strokes in your mind, maybe feeling eyelids heavy. That's fine. Our boring history is a lullaby. Another silent rule surfaces at sext hour. The pause. Every tool must stop mid-stroke when bell rings. Not after finishing word, not mid-word, exactly at bell. The practice trains detachment, dissolving pride in work. So the bell tolls. Quills freeze like startled cranes. Fingers lift off parchment. Even dust motes seem to hold breath. 30 heartbeats pass. Then work resumes. You sense how discipline, worth more than ink, binds these people. Let's wander to the lesser-known quadrant, the cipher closet. Few photocopies, manuscript, live here. Encrypted treaties, secret correspondences, some in Greek, some in runes. Only 3 brothers own the hand signal key that grants entry. Today, Brother Udo needs a scroll to satisfy Sir Benoit's curiosity later. He stands before the locked lattice and traces gesture series. Open palm, twist thumb, touch eyebrow, tap knee. Code for Request Scroll 9. From within, unseen arm fists reply. One knock, affirmative. Scroll passes through hatch.
Rules escalate in this closet. Holder must walk the scroll inside an inverted cone of silence, a literal cone, parchment rolled into funnel shape perched on his head, forcing him to keep chin down lest scroll tumble. Ridiculous? Effective. While Elo inches back, you note his dignity remains intact. Humility is part of uniform. Late afternoon, the air thickens with hot wax smell. Novices replenish candles. Candle carts squeak despite grease, so novices break them by wrapping wheels in wool scraps. Another improvised hush. Marcus's bead cord now holds 5 beads, half day gone. If they reach Vespers with at least 1 bead, Abbot might award honey in porridge tomorrow. Stakes sugary high. Sudden flutter, a bat trapped since night circles rafters. Crispin, terrified novice, gasps audible. Marcus's hand grabs the bead cord, slides 1 bead reluctantly. Domitilla signals window and cloth. Martin hurls his cloak upward. Bat eventually swoops through open lattice. Crisis done, but sugar dwindles. As sun tilts west, library temperature dips, vellum stiffens. Scribes slip iron straightedges under pages to prevent curling. Another silent rule, no blowing on pages. Moisture spreads mildew. Instead, gentle waving of a board called a fanner. You watch crisp ripples of air dance over wet gold lines. Evening shadows converge. Vigil team for upcoming night appear in doorway. Among them are limping Hugo, replaced by Brother Peter, fresh legs. Shift handover protocol starts with the count. Day team lines books on tables. Night team counts chains align tally board. Any discrepancy triggers full-scale audit. Tonight counts match. Miracle considering chain repairs. Marcus beams. 3 beads remain. Honey porridge probable. Before departing, Domitilla performs one last duty. She replaces the charcoal scribbles on rule plaque. Every day, a fresh copy is displayed so novices internalize. She writes with chalk. Silentarium est arc sapientia. Silence is the citadel of wisdom. Words glow bone white in lantern gleam. She bows, exits stage left, whispering not a syllable. Moonrise has barely lifted past the cloister arches when the night watch seals the oak door behind us, and the library's hush ripens into something heavier than sound, an almost physical weight that rests on your shoulders the moment the latch engages. If you've drifted back into our candle-lit labyrinth, slip a sleepy "still awake" in the comments and brush the subscribe bell like a moth grazing flame. Those tiny taps keep this quiet corner of YouTube from sinking into dust as surely as the brothers' chains keep their books from wandering. The first order of darkness is the lantern lottery. Every dusk, the armarius lines 6 horn-paned lamps on a trestle, snuffs 5, then spins them like dice. Where each chimney stops determines which aisle its glow may occupy for the entire vigil. Chance dictates scholarship tonight.
If your manuscript lives in the shadows, so be it. You either copy blind or wait for dawn. Brother Peter, fresh to the shift, bows to fate as his lot lands near the herbals section. He pockets a flint, shoulders the lamp, and pads off between towering lecterns, leaving the rest to navigate by memory and the restless shimmer of stars that filter through high rose windows.
Here's another rule the daytime visitors never witness. Every quarter hour, the watchmaster must announce the time, but with sand, not speech. He flips an egg-shaped glass sealed inside a padded box so thick even turning it is nearly silent. Only the faint hiss of grains marks the passing. To confirm, he uncorks a sliver of wax on top. If a single grain escapes into the ramekin beneath, the flip was sloppy, and he owes an extra nocturnal psalm at Lud's. Tonight the grains fall true, library pride intact.
Along the north aisle, Sister Beatrix kneels at a desk scarcely larger than a game board, its surface slanted like a scale. She's pricking a fresh quire, punching guide holes by candlelight so lines will later march straight. Each prick must land exactly 7 vellum fibers from the margin. She measures by feel, not sight, counting threads between thumb and first knuckle. Miss by 1 fiber, and tomorrow's rubricator will mutter curses in absolute silence, which is an art in itself. Somewhere an owl echoes outside. Beatrix pauses, fingers poised, letting night resettle before resuming her rhythmic puncture, a percussion only parchment can hear.
Back near the chained folios, Brother Peter encounters the evening's first dilemma. A visiting dormouse has chosen volume of Gregory's Moralia as balcony for nocturnal stargazing. Trapping rodents is forbidden after Compline. The squeal would squander beads from the silence cord. So Peter invokes the gentle eviction protocol. He unpockets a sprig of angelica, mice despise its scent, waves it in slow looping spirals until the creature scampers off to less sacred rafters. He then flicks thumbs together 3 times, standard sign for area secure. Across the room, the watchmaster acknowledges by tilting his hourglass box 30 degrees. Message received, grains still steady. Curious what other beasts slip past cloister walls? Drop your wildest medieval infestation theory below. If someone guesses the correct, historically documented culprit for 1298's great parchment shortage, I'll pin your comment for all insomniac historians to admire. Beyond the rodent diversion, we sidle toward the translation desk where Brother Jaimo wrestles Latin into Old French for a visiting countess who can't decode scholastic grammar but wishes to parade piety. Translators here operate under an oath called sub umbra, in shadow, meaning their voices must never rise above insect drone, even while sounding out tricky words. But tonight, Jaimo faces a conundrum. The Latin phrase preputium veritatis, the foreskin of truth, a metaphor for Revelation's unveiling. There is no polite vernacular equivalent. Jaimo grimaces, scratches scalp, then writes a gloss so tiny it resembles dust. Coverture peeled from certainty. He hopes the Countess accepts poetry over anatomy. In the Southwest Bay, the Physic Archive hums with a different tension. Sister Matildas, herbalist by day, midnight experimenter by inclination, has smuggled in a thumb-sized vial of lapis lazuli powder mixed with walnut oil. She's convinced the blend might illuminate marginal birds with a blue bright enough to shame heaven. Yet Rule 17 forbids unsanctioned pigments. Volatile oils warp vellum. So she works under a shuttered lantern, applying microdots on scrap offcut, counting 20 breaths between strokes to let oil seep. If discovered, she forfeits a month's worth of copying privileges and must mend stable blankets instead. Still, she paints, gambler in habit. Watching her, you might taste the risk, like smoke curling behind incense. And about halfway through the vigil, a low thud vibrates along oak beams, one of the outer buttresses unsettled by wind. Vibrations risk loosening plaster dust that could snow onto open pages. The watchmaster rings the emergency soft bell, a padded mallet striking a leather drum. All scribes fold folios shut in synchronized motion called the flutter. It sounds like 100 birds shutting wings at once. Brother Peter and Sister Beatrix hurry to drape linen cloths over exposed shelves. Hymo caps ink pots with horn tablets that double as paperweights. Crisis contained in 30 heartbeats. The silence cord still rests with 3 beads left, but sweat beads more plentiful. Let's glide now to the corner nobody but initiates ever strolls, the gesture school. Fresher novices kneel before a painted panel illustrating 30 library mudras, hand positions for everyday tasks. Tonight's lesson, volumen versum, the 2-finger roll used to summon an assistant. Novice Crispin, remember him and the bat, must master each mudra blindfolded. He responds to Sister Helicent's tap code on his shoulder, forming shapes against candle halo. When he passes, Helicent rewards him with a square of candied fennel. But Crispin, trying to murmur gratias, forgets himself. Tiny slip escapes lips. Helicent sighs, retrieves the candy, and tethers it by silk thread above the lectern, visible penance. That sugar will dangle until he survives 1 full night slip-free. All this while, outside the mullioned glass, the wind decides to play organist. It threads through stone traceries, producing a choir of moans. For novices, the sound tempts conversation. Fear loves company. But tradition says the library moans are the breath of Saint Columba reciting lost verses. Speak over him, and you invite scribal cramp for life. So everyone stoops deeper, quills scratching counterpoint to ghostly chords. Half night passes. Time for the drinking of ink. No, not literal quaffing, though some do inadvertently sip pen tips in fatigue, but a ritual metaphor. Each scribe marks end of current folio with 3 dots shaped like an inverted triangle. This signals to angels, so the legend goes, that knowledge sealed thus will reach heaven even if the manuscript burns. Dot placement must align perfectly with baseline. Missing by hair will require scraping and repainting. Tonight, 17 triangles bloom under lantern glow, constellations mapping scholarship. Speaking of scraping, Sister Beatrix misinks a descender of long S so it kisses the rubric border. She winces, draws her penknife, a sliver of tempered steel shorter than index finger, and begins the delicate erasure. She must shave pigment without flaying parchment grain. 3 micro curls fall, vanish. She buffs spot with pumice and rewrites letter slender and shy. If you lean closer, careful, candles, you see ghost of original stroke beneath. Mistakes never wholly depart. They simply linger quieter, rather like regrets you and I carry through sleepless nights. Just then, the door thumps, 2 rapid knocks, 1 slow. Password rhythm granting entrance to Medicus Brother Anselm, summoned for nosebleeds or quill punctures. Tonight he bears a different burden, a scroll from the abbot marked Clausum. Marcus, evening custos, reads seal and stiffens. Clausum means contents demand immediate transcription into code and instant destruction of original. Anselm stays to witness compliance. They light the sacrificial brazier, in silence, of course. Hymo fetches cipher sheets keyed in shifting Greek-Latin letter pairs. For 30 tense minutes, quills blaze, copying cryptic phrases about property disputes with a neighboring priory and potential intervention by archbishop. When done, original scroll is fed to brazier. Flame ingests parchment with hiss like steaming tears. Anselm scribbles witness sign, exits. Another bead falls, ritual allowed minimal whisper. 2 beads left till dawn.
Before you nod off, here's a riddle librarians pose to break monotony without words. They draw choir marks, incorporating rebus animals. Spotting them becomes a clandestine pastime. Tonight, Matildus slips a hedgehog outline into the margin of De Natura Rerum. If Crispin finds it by prime, he earns his candied fennel back. We'll see.
Hours crawl. Lantern oil gutters. When flame teeters low, Peter raises the sparrow fingers, signal to trim wick. He snips charred end, flame blooms steady. Outside, sky pales bruised violet. The glass moans quiet. Inside, scribes quicken pace. They must close volumes before cockcrow, lest daylight catch pigments still damp.
And just as first blackbird tries a tentative chirp, library precedent allows birdsong without bead loss. The watchmaster flips final sandbox. Grains tumble slower now, heavy with dew. He circles once, tapping each weary shoulder, offering one silent blessing. Thumb crosses forehead, lips, heart. Work ceases. Quills sheathe, benches roll to walls, and chain links settle with soft, satisfied sighs.
Door opens. Day team ghost in. Shift change reverses every movement we witnessed twilight before. Marcus counts his cord. Only 1 bead remains. Honey porridge secured. Whisper-thin smiles ripple through night crew. They file out toward dormitory where they'll sleep through matins, dreams scented by parchment and lamp smoke. Sunlight finally wedges itself through the narrow lancet windows, and every beam seems to expose dust motes swirling like tiny illuminated letters. So many unruly alphabets the brothers will never catch in their net of rules. If you're back for another vigil in our parchment-scented hideout, prove it by tapping that lonely subscribe bell before the moat you're staring at drifts out of sight. And leave me a comment naming the strangest place you've ever tried to read in silence. The cloister cats will judge the answers while sharpening claws on the choir stalls. First business of daylight is the Great Exchange, a ritual that looks less like shift change and more like a border crossing between sovereign nations of sleep and study. Night crew carry their ledger, tabula nox, heavy with wax notations about blown fuses of silence cord or creeping damp on window ledges.
They meet day crew at the central lectern known as the turntable, so called because it actually spins on a greased spindle big enough to pivot a full folio without turning pages. No words pass. Instead, they trade 3 objects: an ivory tally stick, the master quill of the watch, and a walnut ink file sealed with lion gold wax. Whoever controls all 3 reigns over library for the next 12 hours. But today, a hitch. The wax stamp sports a fresh hairline crack hinting at evaporation inside. Ink thickens into sludge when forgotten overnight. Brother Peter, bleary-eyed victor of rodent skirmish, raises one eyebrow in mute accusation. Sister Matildis answers with a shrug and taps her fingers in the mudra for repentance later, coffee first. Speaking of coffee, none exists, of course, not until centuries later, which might explain why medieval scribes looked permanently half asleep. Instead, they sip wake broth, hot water stirred with dried thyme, vinegar, and a fingernail sliver of ginger root if the infirmarian is feeling charitable. Novice Crispin, still sugar-deprived from last night's candied fennel debacle, slurps a mug and makes a face that silently screams, "I'd rather eat the quill!" Sister Helicent grants mercy and drops his dangling candy into the brew, rendering drinkable what was formerly penance. Circle of grace, even here. Now the daylight roster fans out like chess pieces. The Armarius remains king, but rooks are 2 key keepers wearing iron rings from which dangle dozens of miniature keys. The rings jangle only if they skip Rule 6. Oil the joints with lamb fat every dawn so metal whispers instead of clanging. Each key guards a specific press or chain, and color-coded tassels add a silent hierarchy. Blue for patristics, green for herbals, crimson for heresy locked behind iron grill. Losing a tassel invites a punishment called the vacuum, a week of scraping wax strips off choir benches after Mass, head bowed until dizziness sets in. The queen on this chessboard is actually Sister Beatrix, promoted at Lauds to oversee today's illumination sequence. She glides beneath clerestory light, wielding a goose quill trimmed finer than spider thread. Her target, a massive psalter open beneath a rawhide membrane known as sun shield, filtering brightness to spare vellum. The page margin already sports vines twisting into beasts with uncomfortable morals, but an empty medallion waits near Psalm 51, Miserere mei, Deus. She lifts a pallet of egg tempera and, with a smile only you and I detect, begins composing a weeping King David whose tears morph into musical notes falling onto harps. It's visual theology, but also a subtle jab at the cantor who criticized her pitch during last Sunday's response. Nothing like passive-aggressive artistry in eternal pigment. While we linger over color, let's slide into the pigment vault. Down 2 spiral steps, stone-worn concave, you reach a room that smells of vinegar, smoke, and crushed beetles. Here jars glow like captured sunsets. Ornament, deadly arsenic yellow. Verdigris, copper green. Madder lake, blood of roots. And, locked in a cedar chest, ultramarine, ground from Afghan lapis, worth more than gold. Only the Armarius possesses key, and he issues flecks measured on a cherry wood spoon thinner than a whisper. Today, Sister Matildis petitions for a single spoon of orpiment to finish the halo around her rebellious blue bird.
She kneels, extends hands in the mudra capio lumen. I desire light. The Armarius pauses, glances at last night's log referencing unsanctioned oil tests, then grudgingly dispenses half a spoon. Mercy tempered by memory.
Meanwhile, sunlight ignites dust pockets inside stained glass oculi, projecting kaleidoscopes of saints onto the flagged floor. Library cats, descendants of some legendary ship-mouser, chase colored beams with studied indifference, until one decides to drag a feather bookmark across Augustine's City of God. Brother Hymo scolds with a gesture, 2 fingers sweeping upward. Cease or be exiled. Cat flicks tail, obviously unimpressed, but relocates to a volume of sermons by Bernard of Clairvaux, much less appetizing.
Remember the cipher scroll incinerated last night? Its coded echo now rests inside a codex marked Arcana, shelved behind triple chain. Daylight scribe Brother Ivo must integrate cipher into ongoing ledger of delicate matters. He reads Hymo's midnight translation, then writes summary using a shorthand of loops and thorns only 4 people in Abbey can read. If he fumbles, political ructions may follow. His forehead beads with sweat, quill trembles. He whispers a single Latin appeal, Illumina oculos meos. Technically a verbal breach, but the Armarius pretends not to hear. Some prayers outrank silence. Now let's tour the reading wheel, medieval answer to multitasking. Imagine a vertical Ferris wheel of shelves, each holding an open book. Spin the wheel and any title comes before your eyes without shuffling stacks. Sister Helicent climbs on a footstool, sets wheel in motion with measured push. Wood groans like distant thunder. She aims to cross-reference bestiaries, herbal compendia, and a travelogue by one brother Sigismund who claimed dragons nested in North African deserts. As wheel turns, she traces parallels between dragon blood's supposed medicinal properties and hedgehog bile, surprisingly similar on the medieval pharmacy spectrum. She marks findings on wax tablets. If correlation holds, she'll update infirmary notes, maybe save someone from gout by prescribing hedgehog stew flavored with mythical reptile drippings. Science marches on, or wobbles politely. We haven't mentioned visitors yet. Yes, secular scholars occasionally brave the cloister's hush. Today's petitioners are 2 Dominican friars sent by bishop to verify no heretical glosses fester in commentaries here. They cloak themselves in official gloom, but per Rule 8 they must submit to the gesture briefing. Keykeeper demonstrates 5 silent signs: request ink, request knife, request margin reference, request latrine, and I abjure this argument but concede space. The friars nod, though one promptly forgets and mimes full sentences with hands, which looks like manic puppetry. Novice Crispin chuckles, subverbal, and Sister Helicent flicks him with feather edge of bookmark, a stingy correction. Mid-morning, library stomachs growl in 3-part harmony. Eating forbidden inside, but allowances exist for quick nibbling of scribes' manna, unleavened wafers stamped with choir numbers. They taste like paper, essentially are paper, but supply minimal crumbs. Brother Peter slides a wafer under his tongue to quell gurgles before they echo off vaults. He swears the imprint of choir mark 57 will brand his palate forever.
Let's interject audience engagement. If you were forced to consume part of a book to survive, which text would you choose and why? Drop your edible literature in comments. Weirdest answer earns digital wafer emoji and eternal bragging rights. Tension spikes when the outer cloister bell rings noon sext. According to library charter, that gong triggers mass exodus. All scribes must vacate for midday meal except those holding red tassel keys, heresy section, and blue tassel, patristics. But Sister Matildis lingers, unwilling to leave her bluebird halo half-baked. She dips brush again, but oil flicks onto margin where a scribe months ago delicately penned Gloria. Panic. She grabs pumice. Brother Ivo sees, gestures wild, freeze. Too late. Pumice removes pigment, but scuffs vellum, letter ghosts. Matildis blanches. This could mean 3 weeks of no pigment access. To salvage, she invents a flourish, extends the halo splash into comet trail, transforms smudge into star descending on David's tears. It feels miraculous, but will the censor approve? After meal, novices drag in a contraption, the dust press, a box fitted with muslin bags and hand bellows. Purpose, vacuum, pre-Dyson style, stray dust from spines. Operating it produces a low whoosh, like ocean inside seashell. They must time bellows strokes with beating heartbeats, maintains rhythm that dampens ambient noise. Crispin pumps, counting silently. Lub-dub, press. Lub-dub, release. Each puff expels clouds smelling of pepper and candle soot. They collect dust in a jar labeled pulvis librorum, later mixed with linseed and sold as colored putty to local artisans. Medieval recycling.
Mid-afternoon gloom creeps as sun slants. Stained glass saints bleed crimson pools across floorboards. This triggers the shadow tally. Every scribe must log sun's position against a carved notch on desk. These notches, aligned annually at equinox, track seasonal drift. Data goes into astronomy register, helping monks predict Easter. So your library scribble shapes liturgical calendar. No pressure.
Tea, Groot infusion, arrives, borne by lay brother with a cart muffled in lamb's wool to prevent wheel squeak. He pours into wooden cups whose rims are lined with silver strips etched with Psalm 34. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Novices memorize verse by tracing lips along letters. A sensual catechism disguised as hydration. Suddenly, a flutter. Actual bird inside. A swift dive-bombing past oculi. Window grill cracked earlier. Now chaos. Bird risks manuscripts with droppings. The emergency response? Silence nets. Gauze squares fitted to poles. Sister Helicent and Brother Peter coordinate. Mudras for vector angles. Her net high, his low. 10 suspenseful seconds. The swift swoops. He flicks net upward. Capture. Applause forbidden, so scribes flick fingers like rain. Silent cheer. The swift released outside. Library breathes again. Late afternoon ushers in most perilous duty, the lone ledger. A Benedictine prior from neighboring abbey requests temporary custody of Dialogues of Gregory. Policy requires 3 seals, abbot, armarius, and bishop's delegate. But bishop's man hasn't arrived. Prior offers his personal ring impression as substitute. Debate erupts, gesture debate, hands slicing air like falcon wings.
Finally, compromise. Create wax seal. Suspend scroll with terms inside a small reliquary until delegate signs. Book stays. Prior sighs. Accepts cup of Groot. Will sleep in guest house. Crisis deferred. As sun squats on horizon, Sister Beatrix examines her illuminated comet. She invites Hymo for critique. He inspects, strokes beard, then in marginal Latin scribbles, "From error, new wonder births." She smiles, absolution in 5 words. Looks like her pigment privileges survive. And now, golden hour turns everything amber, preparing for Vespers. The lantern lottery resumes. Night shift edges into corridor. Before leaving, day crew gather at turntable again. They place tally stick, quill, and healed ink file. Matildis had warmed sludge over brazier. It flows. Keys pass. Watchmaster of night shift nods. Moonrise finds us still ankle-deep in parchment shavings, and before the first silver ray even kisses the cloister roof tiles, I'm going to ask them nightly favor. Nudge that subscribe bell like you're ringing for Compline. Slide a candlelit comment below telling me which ancient text you'd sacrifice a night's sleep to copy by hand. And pass this tale to your favorite insomniac, because nothing tucks you in quite like the rustle of vellum and the threat of eternal penance. The moment Vespers dissolve into the hush of after prayer, the library shutters swing shut with a sigh, equal parts exhaustion and anticipation. Night crew settles in. Brother Cuthbert, the lantern master. Sister Agnes, the chain warden. Novice Odillo clutching a fresh stub of beeswax as if it were a security blanket. They start by stoking the braziers. 3 forbidden sparks only, fanned until coals glow enough to fool the fingers, but not enough to smoke the manuscripts. A silent procession follows, each scribe dipping 2 fingers in chilled rosewater kept in a bronze bowl at the threshold, tracing a cross on the brow. The water's scent marks boundaries between secular chaos and sacred insomnia. We, unseen companions, cross with them. Cuthbert allocates lanterns according to a star chart etched on a cedar panel. The library is zoned into constellations. Capra over the agronomy shelves, Orion near commentaries on Job, and Draco curling round the heresy grills. Tonight he assigns Agnes to Draco with a double-wick lantern trimmed low. She nods and slides away, keys whispering like metallic cicadas against her hip. Odilo gets Capra, safer, but his lantern is tired. 1 stubby wick, glass cracked. He bows gratitude anyway. Humility is cheaper than repairs. 20 minutes into the vigil, crisis pulses across the floorboards. A faint plink, as if an unseen harp string snapped. Odilo freezes, Agnes pivots. Cuthbert lifts lantern toward the sound and sees nothing. Then another plink, nearer, from the ceiling beams. Bats? No, a bead of water forming on a vaulted boss, big as a tear. Storm clouds gathered unnoticed while we were busy counting dust motes. Now a pressure change pushes damp through limestone. If that drop lands on the wrong folio, pigment will bloom into psychedelic tragedy. Emergency drill unfurls. Agnes plants her lantern, frees the orange-tasseled key, maintenance cache, unlocks a cupboard, produces oilskin tarps. Odilo darts down aisle with wooden stilts, makeshift scaffold legs that slot into floor sockets.
They work in silence, but not in calm. Every heartbeat seems amplified. Cuthbert raises both hands, gives the mudra, split and cover. Within 90 seconds, a canvas roof spans the threatened aisle, drip arrested before it can baptize Augustine in rainwater. Viewers, imagine performing Cirque du Soleil suspended in total hush. That's library crisis management. Storm rumbles, distant for now, but memory circles back to last year's St. Swithin's Eve when lightning speared the reading wheel. That night, the wheel spun itself 3 full turns before catching fire, pages fluttering like panicked doves. The community formed a bucket line in total silence. Only thunder spoke. They saved most volumes, but the wheel's ash still stains the north transept floor, a scar we step over tonight. The rebuilt wheel stands taller, copper grounding rod reaching through roof tiles like an upraised sword challenging the sky. Cuthbert takes advantage of storm-born static to begin his secret census. Once a quarter, he inventories volatile volumes, books whose contents risk stoking heresy or inflaming local politics. Task is performed at night, off the official ledger, on a palimpsest parchment scraped so thin light passes through. With the lantern at ankle height, he checks each chain link, each lock plate. One link shows fresh burr marks, filed recently. He signs to Agnes. Which copyist worked Physica yesterday? She replies with finger alphabet. No one. Alarm bells mute but loud in mind. Someone, sometime, tested a file. Probably curious, maybe treasonous. We pivot to the scriptorium annex turned storm observatory. Sister Beatrix, earlier relieved of pigment duty, returns wearing an old leather apron blotched with indigo. She's here for the Blue Flash Challenge, a tradition. Attempt to mix the darkest sky blue possible during a thunderstorm, claiming celestial permission. She grinds woad in a porphyry mortar, adding a breath of charcoal. Each flash of lightning through oculi, she holds slurry against the light and judges depth. Agnes passes, pauses just long enough to raise eyebrows. Audacious! Beatrix tilts mortar like a toast to the heavens and continues. Adillo, meanwhile, is stuck with Capra duties, dusting agronomy volumes, logging wormholes. He stumbles upon a quire misshelved, anonymously authored booklet on lunar irrigation, slipped between treatises on turnips. Margins seeded with cryptic noti, tiny half-moon crescents marking paragraphs, each circumference pierced with dots like star charts. Adillo looks left, looks right, pockets the quire into his scapular for later reading. Library rule forbids personal study during watch, but curiosity, dear viewers, is the most contagious monastic vice. He'll pay for that soon enough. Wind now bellows through cloister arcade. Window shutters jitter like teeth. Cuthbert climbs spiral to rooftop trapdoor, pushes into gale, checks copper rod ground strap. Rain peppering his tonsure, he ties linen scrap around strap, ritual that says rooted. Then lightning forks, silhouette of rod glows electric violet. Spark sizzles, but disperses safely into earth. Inside, Agnes stands beneath rebuilt wheel, hand poised to break if conductive fear takes root again. Let's break fourth wall for a call and response. Have you ever sat in a thunderstorm with only books for company? Describe the soundtrack in comments.
Was it rain clattering on tin, thunder rolling off mountains, or the soft slosh of your own nerves? Share, and I'll choose one tale to read during next live stream of Parchment Crinkling ASMR. Back in stacks, Beatrix unveils her storm blue on a trial scrap. It's deep enough to swallow candlelight. Success! But she needs binder, egg yolk. Kitchen's locked. Solution: raiding infirmary for sleep draft eggs reserved for insomniac novices. She recruits Odillo, promising glimpse at heresy grill keys in return. They navigate corridor where lightning shadows strobe on stone. Stealing eggs from herbalist cupboard requires cunning. Circumvent Goosewatcher, Sister Theodrata, who naps behind barrel of valerian. Odillo uses the lost cat ploy. Tags Theodrata's sleeve with a wax seal shaped like paw, a secret signal meaning search outside. She wakes, grumbles, fetches lantern for fictitious cat hunt. Drawer raid succeeds. Yolk meets pigment. Storm blue immortalized on parchment scrap shaped into star. But trouble seeds itself. The stolen eggs leave a gap in infirmary ledger. Theodrata will notice by lauds. Someone will hang. Odillo's pocketed moonchart choir also threatens exposure. And that burr-scarred chain link begs explanation. Past midnight, the rule of silence loosens just enough. Scribes may chant Psalm 91 under breath while patrolling. Agnes leads, voice a mere exhalation. Qui habitat in adiutorio altissimi. Echoes ripple against vaults. Even cats pause, ears pivot. Lightning subsides, thunder rolls farther. Library exhaling as if tension were an exercise demon. Cuthbert logs storm event in nocturnal ledger. Time, duration, chain anomaly, pigment mission. He draws tiny lightning glyph, testament for future librarians. Energy wanes, braziers dim. But before dawn resets hierarchies, one last revelation flares. Sister Beatrix slips her storm blue star into Liber Figurarum, a mystical compendium bound for bishops' review. Between folios, she hides it as visual footnote to a diagram of divine spheres. Blue star shining, private wink to cosmos. If bishop finds, he might praise miraculous hue, or denounce unauthorized pigment. Risk is part of artistry. Cuthbert douses lantern wicks until only one sentinel light remains, hanging from wheel hub, glowing eye over sleeping texts. He raises final mudra, night ended. Agnes, Odillo, Beatrix, even cats respond with crossed thumbs over hearts. Amen. A rooster somewhere beyond the cloister wall crows, scraping a raw line through the violet-gray sky, and every book in the library seems to flinch at the sound, as though parchment, too, can feel morning's cold blade slide under its covers. Before we let daylight pry apart last night's secrets, do the small kindness that keeps this midnight caravan rolling. Press the subscribe bell with the same delicate intent you'd show a 17th line illumination. Leave a comment naming the most irreplaceable text you'd rescue from a burning scriptorium. And share this video with one soul who loves the smell of ink more than sleep. Your engagement is the wax that seals our letters to the algorithmic angels, so don't be shy with it. Now, hold your breath and follow me, because dawn has teeth. The bell of prime rings off-tempo. Not the measured triple stroke Father Amo trained for, but a jarring clang, pause, clang, like someone snatching the rope mid-pull. In response, the dormitory door bursts open and spits a crowd of half-laced monks into the cloister walk, faces pinched by a single thought. Inspection day has begun earlier than expected. Word leaked yesterday that Canon Bartholomeus, envoy of the cathedral chapter and part-time inquisitor of librarian irregularities, would arrive after terce. Yet the sound of horse hooves already rattles the courtyard. He's here, damp wind still combing frost from his cape. Brother Cuthbert barely had time to shellac the last of the storm soot off the lantern glass. Sister Agnes straightens the chain keys at her belt until they fan like harp strings, every lock ready for a tune. Novice Odillo, who spent the pre-dawn hour memorizing the forged inventory that hides the missing eggs, tries to bury his nerves under a brisk march to the refectory for bread. But Canon Bartholomeus intercepts him, gauntleted hand resting on the novice's scapular as lightly as an accusation. "Your name?" the canon asks. His breath steams. His breath smells faintly of nutmeg, an expensive prophylactic against plague. Odillo stammers, mutters something about breakfast duty. Bartholomeus's eyes, the color of iron filings, study the novice's ink-speckled fingertips longer than politeness allows. Then he dismisses him with a curt nod and turns toward the library arch. Thunder last night might have shaken rafters, but this man's silence shakes people. Inside the library, the air is locked. You smell the storm's ghost and the faint tang of woad. Agnes follows 2 steps behind the canon, keys clinking louder than an alarm. Every monk or sister stationed at lecterns freezes mid-page, lips closing on words they won't admit speaking. Bartholomeus halts beneath the great reading wheel, newly rebuilt. He lifts a gloved finger and traces the grain of oak where lightning once split it. "May I spin?" he asks. Not really a question. Agnes nods. He gives the wheel a mighty shove. Folios secured about its rim flutter madly, as though each were trying to escape. The wheel rotates once, twice, and a third of a turn before groaning to a stop. No fire. But from a slot between 2 hefty commentaries, a folded scrap flutters free. Sister Beatrix's storm-blue star. Only Cuthbert sees it tumble. His heart dives. The canon, absorbed, has not. Quick as a blink, Cuthbert steps forward to steady the wheel, trapping the star under his shoe. He bends, fiddles with the axle. When he straightens, the scrap is gone, slipped into his sleeve. Viewer, if you ever wondered what courage smells like, this is it. Old leather, charred oak, and a gulp of terror. Bartholomeus demands the chirograph. That's the master chain ledger documenting every book, chain length, lock key, and borrowing privilege. Agnes produces it, her hand visibly trembling. He flips through with the same tenderness a butcher shows a carcass. Page 72, medical folios. He frowns. The ledger says 5 boiled eggs remain in infirmary pantry for sedative distillation.
Theodrata's morning count says 3. He notes discrepancy, taps the line. Who logs eggs, he asks. Silence thickens until Odilo clears his throat. Brother, I do. Bartholomeus turns the iron filings back on him. Clerical error or theft? Odilo's mouth dries into parchment.
Before Odilo incriminates half the night watch, Cuthbert intervenes. "Excuse the novice, venerable canon. During the storm, we used additional eggs to polish copper contacts on the lightning rod. Yolks remove verdigris without salt." He keeps his voice steady, citing a maintenance manual only he has read. Bartholomeus weighs the claim, tastes it like unfamiliar spice, then nods slowly. He scribes "accepted with caution" beside the line.
But suspicion has uncoiled, and it won't slither back easily. The chain anomaly surfaces next. The canon, guided by Agnes, approaches the Physica shelf, Draco sector. He measures chain lengths with a pocket span. Each ought to be exactly 9 finger widths and a mercy. One comes up short a quarter width. Burr marks gleam. Bartholomeus mutters a prayer to St. Jerome under his breath. Who held custody of this isle during last night's storm? Agnes was there. Cuthbert, too. Odilo visited only in passing. Beatrix never. All eyes drift to Agnes. She answers by removing the orange tasseled key and presenting it wordlessly. Inspection reveals a faint metallic grit. Evidence of recent filing or just dust? Bartholomeus signals 2 aides to catalog the book chains. They carry small lead seals to crimp onto locks, preventing further tampering. The message? Library autonomy is suspended until guilt is found. Through all this, Beatrix hovers near Pigment Alcove, clutching a lump of lapis like prayer beads. Her storm blue star is now concealed on Cuthbert's person. She must retrieve it or risk heresy charges. Unauthorized illumination smacks of occult pride. But how? Cuthbert stands 3 strides from the canon, feigning interest in lead seals. Beatrix silently lifts a jar of ground azurite, accidentally drops it. Explosion of azure dust billows like summer sky. Everyone coughs, shields eyes. In that blue fog, Cuthbert moves to help, palms Beatrix the folded star. She slips it beneath the smashed jar's shards. When dust settles, the star looks like mere pigment scrap. Disaster disguised as mess. Canon grunts annoyance, demands broom. Crisis diffused, for now. Midday, a new figure arrives, Bishop's steward Hugo. Ostensibly, he escorts a donation, translated Aristotle scrolls. Secretly, he's here to question rumors of prophetic moon charts. Odilo still hides that choir in his scapular. Steward Hugo exchanges pleasantries with Bartholomeus, then requests to review astronomical holdings for dangerous correlations. Canon grants. They move toward Capra sector. Odilo's pulse hammers, sweat beads. He needs to dispose of the choir before they ask each novice to empty pockets. He edges toward the brazier. Fire would erase evidence. But Sister Theodrata chooses that moment to confront him, waving the egg ledger. Her scolding whisper pins him. "Where are my missing sedatives?" Odilo mutters apology, claims storm duty again. Theodrata sniffs, not convinced.
Steward Hugo calls for all lanterns extinguished in Capra so he can test parchment under natural northern light for hidden inks. In gloom, Odillo sees chance. He slides the choir against the brick of brazier, watching edges curl. But sparks sting. He flinches. Half the choir singes but clings to life. Before he can finish, Hugo calls, "Novice, bring that paper!" Cornered, he obeys, handing over charred moons.
Hugo spreads pages, recognizes marginal crescents. This is Ioannas de Sacrobosco's forbidden commentary on lunar influence, copied without authorization. He presses the burned edge. Why half destroy? Odillo's voice breaks. I feared misinterpretation. Bartholomeus steps in, eyes colder. You feared getting caught, perhaps. Punishment ranges from silent fast to expulsion. But Cuthbert intercedes again. He claims responsibility, argues that during emergency he authorized Odillo to salvage fell-shelved material, but instructions were ambiguous. Canon weighs loyalty against negligence. He settles on collective penance, a week's nocturnal vigil without sleep easements, plus forfeiture of evening bread. Harsh, survivable. The storm-blue star, now dry, emerges as hero. During hustle, Beatrix recovers it from broken jar shards, folds it into a new composite pigment recipe, labels Caelum Sanctum. She petitions Canon to test its luminosity on Bishop's donation scroll headers, argues gift should radiate devotion. Canon, hungry for redeeming success, agrees. When she mixes binder and strokes star ink over capital letters, the hue mesmerizes even Hugo. He murmurs, "Like dawn seen through sapphire." Canon softens. Maybe this library isn't a nest of negligence, but of potential. Afternoon shadows lengthen. Verdict time. Bartholomeus convenes scriptorium floor. He praises pigment innovation, admonishes security lapses, and installs a new protocol. Night watches will rotate with lay brothers, a subtle demotion. Agnes surrenders extras keys into cedar chest, locked with lead seal. Cuthbert keeps lantern authority, but must train successor. Odillo is sentenced to copy the damaged moon commentary thrice, so Bishop can study, Canon can censor, library can retain one. Nightfall arrives again. Storm long gone, sky clear. Yet hearts still rumble with aftershocks. In refectory, penance meal of plain barley gruel tastes of humble pie. But laughter sparks when Beatrix slips Odillo a preserved fig, sweet rebellion. Cuthbert, eyes ringed dark, thanks Agnes for silent solidarity. Sister Agnes, rarely verbose, gifts him a single word. Always. Midnight. Lantern. Unofficial epilogue. Lantern glows soft under wheel. Cuthbert opens secret ledger. Records day's events. Inspection survived. Chain filed by unknown yet to return. Vigilance continues. Storm pigment accepted. Miracle? He adds a drawing. Small star painted in diluted storm blue. Beneath he writes, "Memory of fear can itself illuminate." And that, sleepless companions, closes our 7-night pilgrimage through shelves where silence speaks louder than bells. If the murmur of turning folios soothed your restless brain, gift us a like,
Ring the bell for future vigils, and spread this tale to any friend who dare steal time with monks when the world outside forgets how to whisper. Until the next nocturnal adventure, dream in ink, breathe in parchment, and remember, every library keeps secrets, but only the sleepless ever hear them rustle good night.